All right, we're going to move to Q&A right now. And I've got my first question, and Father Lovell and Father Duvall are going to come up to the front of the room, and I've got a mic, and I've already got 3 questions lined up. Sorry about that.
While we're going to the microphone, just real quickly, I did forget to mention in my talk that while we passed on the Cedar Lake property in northwest Indiana, we did put a bid in on property in northwest Indiana, and it was accepted. And if all goes well, we will close on the property on December 27th, the Feast of St. John the Evangelist, who more than likely was named after St. John the Baptist. And we will move in mid-January. It is a farm, basically, that we were able to purchase, and the house is only 2 years old. So all we have to do is basically repaint the bedrooms. They had teenagers living there. And teenagers pick the most interesting colors to paint their rooms. But other than that, that's all that we have to do. Unfortunately, it cannot be what we were hoping for with the Cedar Lake property, which was not only a home for priests, as well as a public shrine where the faithful could come and visit. This is going to be more of a safe house, so we're going to keep, at least for the time being, the address of where it is secret. That is in no way reflects the wonderful generosity of our donors, many of whom are in this room. It's just we have to be careful because, some priests that have been canceled have been killed. And it was suicide. No, it wasn't suicide. So we have to be careful that we protect the priests that need a place, whether it's short-term or long-term. But I want to thank especially all those in Indiana that have helped, both Hoosiers and Boilermakers, to help us find a property. And we're very happy to be moving to Indiana, the reddest of red states in the Midwest. And for those that live in Indiana, you're like, it's not Florida. I'm like, I know it's not Florida. I get it, but it's better than Illinois. A lot better in Illinois. So, questions? Yeah. As far as I know,
We have a mic issue, so for the YouTube.
I was gonna repeat the question. I was just about to say I think the mic is just picking up for the recording, but for those that are here, the question is what type of technique can be used to keep priests in ministry, and to be honest, there's no technique. When you preach the truth, you're going to get canceled. It's as simple as that. St. John the Baptist was canceled. Jesus was canceled. The ultimate cancellation is being crucified on the cross. It's as simple as that. And if you look at all the saints, but especially the priest saints, all of them, like St. Nicholas, had to go under some type of persecution, all right, in order to proclaim the truth. And you have to realize, we often get this question asked, Father Duvall and myself, well, what did you do that you got canceled? And that's the wrong question. The question has to be to Bishop Doherty and to the Archbishop of Indianapolis and to all the bishops. What are you going to do to get priests that have done nothing wrong back into ministry? All right. We just saw with the speaker coming in February, she was canceled because the Archdiocese doesn't want to stand up to a horrible sin, a sin that cries to heaven for vengeance, according to Scripture. They would rather cower than do that. And thankfully for Vicky and for the Board of Cups that you guys are going to actually host her in February. I hope to be able to come down on February 25th for the talk myself, just to listen to that. So I mean, you have to realize that cancellation is part of being a Catholic, a part of being a Christian. Father Duvall, do you want to add anything to that?
Sacrifice will make you holy if you mentally put yourself in the right place. and spiritually in the right place. The other thing that many people who have been canceled go through is anger, depression, bewilderment, panic, those types of things. I found for myself, when I was able to forgive, joy returned to my life and my priesthood grew. Forgive. Forgive.
My name's Dominic Hoffman, and I'm thinking back to the event that we had here with Father Altman. He kind of made a throwaway comment saying that there are about 2,000 canceled priests, and I was kind of shocked. What, really? Can you confirm that? And if that is so, or whatever the number is, doesn't that mean that if we could return them all to active ministry, that would go a long way toward solving all sorts of crises we have with lack of priests?
So right now, the Coalition for Canceled Priests is serving a new priest every 9 days. This last week, 4 applications, one on the way here. Father was opening some mail. I got it handed to me while I was driving. Put it down there. But I'll get to it tomorrow. But every 9 days. So the process, the due diligence process, takes about 10 to 20 man hours to work through the investigation, because we have to make sure there's not a crime in canon law, civil law, or the Decalogue. What's the Decalogue? 10 Commandments. You got it. Okay. I'd already picked on these two over here, so I thought I could.
Is it 2,000? It could likely be. To just even get canceled priests, especially those that are recently canceled, to apply. They don't know us necessarily. They don't know what we're about. And, so often, and I've talked to Vicki about this, so often, especially priests that have just recently been canceled, well, I trust my bishop. Don't trust your bishop. I wish you could trust your bishop, okay? But, we were talking about doves and serpents, and I'm going to tell you right now, we live in a society now and in a church, sadly, this day and age, where you cannot trust your bishop. And in order to get these canceled priests back into ministry, the laity have to stand up. Fulton Sheen is the one that said that. It's not going to be the bishops, it's not going to be the priests that are going to reform the church. It's going to be you, the laity, that do it. And how do you do that? First, you say, not one more red cent, okay? And you hold bishops accountable. For the longest time, and I say this time and time again, for the longest time, I thought bishops, the one thing that they hated most was losing money, and they do hate losing money. They don't mind spending it, especially on themselves, but they really hate losing it, okay? But what they actually cannot stand the most is bad publicity, okay? And you want to know why Father Flager in Chicago is always put back into ministry? Because his parishioners throw the Archdiocese of Chicago up against the wall, accuse them of being racist, even though Father Flager is as white as I am, all right? And they back down very quickly, all right? I wrote an article, you can look it up in LifeSite News, it's called Feeding Crocodiles, all right? We have to start taking a page out of Father Flager's book. That doesn't mean we have to believe everything that he does or agree with everything that he says, but we have to realize we have to stand up and not take this, what we see in politics, what I like to call the Republican thing. Well, we don't want to be a bully like Donald Trump, or, we don't want, yeah, the Democrats are like that, but the people will eventually see that they're crazy. No, that's not going to happen. All right, we have to stand up. And that's why people love Father Altman so much. And that's what I mentioned in the article, is that Father Altman and Father Flager are doing the same thing. They're seizing the initiative, and they're holding on to the premise of the story, and they're not letting go. And when you're able to do that, all right, people's minds are finally able to open up. And I mentioned this in my talk, whether it's the Summer of Shame with McCarrick or whether or not it's COVID. okay? And I'm sorry, and yes, we do have good bishops, okay? But name me one bishop. I don't care if it's Cardinal Supich or Cardinal McElroy or Bishop Strickland or Archbishop Cordileone, or name any other bishop, good or bad. Name me one bishop that said, you know what, we were wrong what we did in 2020, and we will not do it again. Not one of them has said that.
Another question?
So I personally have a question for you, Father Lovell, Father Duvall. What is the ultimate goal for the Coalition for Canceled Priests? What is the ultimate goal? What would be your definition of success?
Well, and a lot of people think, and a question that we're often asked is, well, have any of the priests been put back into ministry? Answer to that question is yes. Is that necessarily a good thing? In fact, Father was just dealing with a priest today who was put back into ministry and is still being persecuted. You know, it's kind of like, has the priest been put back in the wacky farm yet? Into the insane asylum? Okay, that's what it's coming to. So the Coalition for Canceled Priests, yes, we would want all of our priests, including Father Duvall and myself, to be put back into full active ministry. All right, I honestly think that many a parish would benefit from us being their pastor, whether it's in Illinois or in Indiana. But I'm telling you right now that what the coalition's main goal is to make sure that priests are able to rest assured that somebody has their back. That somebody's there to say, do not worry how you're going to pay the attorney. Do not worry how you're going to pay the canon lawyer. Do not worry where you're going to live. Do not worry where your next meal is coming from, which, by the way, for a time, I had to worry about that. You know, in 2012, I was working at one of the greatest theological schools in the Western Hemisphere, if not in the world, the Dominican House of Studies, right across the street from Catholic University. 1 year later, I was working at Olive Garden in order to support myself. All right. So when people say, well, Father, you know, maybe you should just be diplomatic, blah, 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 blah. My bishop removed me from ministry, cut my pay, and he has the full backing of diocesan stewardship in order to do whatever he wants to me. If he wants to send me away, as Father Duvall mentioned earlier, to an insane asylum, basically, for 8 months to a year, guess who's paying for it? You are. Guess how much it costs to go to St. Luke and St. John Vianney Center in Downingtown, Pennsylvania for just 1 day? How much do you think for 1 day in one of those hospitals costs? 1 day. $1,000 to $2,000 a day. Imagine that for 8 months. Imagine that for a year. You're paying for it. Bishop ain't paying for it. He's still getting his full salary, living in a nice house too. I mean, isn't that the Bishop of Lafayette's house in the picture? Yeah. That's a really nice house. I've never lived in a house like that. So you push me, the Father Altman comes out. So.
Excellent response. We've got another question.
My name is Kathleen Kint. I'm from Georgetown, in Illinois. And I would like to know what your ministry is now. What, you don't do public masses, is that correct?
Our ministry now is helping priests.
Okay.
It's as simple as that. And as Vicki rightly said, bringing fraternity to the priests. Because remember, it's really true, no man is an island, all right? And priests need a family like anyone else. Yes, we're celibates, all right? But priests need to be in community. And when you get isolated like that, we want to come and we want to give them hope. All right. And sometimes it's hard to do that when a priest gets removed. As I said earlier, a lot of priests have said to us at the beginning, I trust the bishop. He has my back. And then 3 years later, they're like, he doesn't care about me at all. I'm like, bingo.
So we're allowed to say private mass. And so most of us have chapels and altars in our houses, those types of things. What we were trained to do, or how we were trained and kind of brainwashed, was just be quiet. and let the process work. Just let the process work. Well, I'm going to say this. This is being recorded, and I'm going to say this. Are you ready?
Do you want to get on camera, Father? Get on camera. Get on camera.
The vicar for clergy, the vicar general for clergy, that consigned dozens of priests to nut houses. Okay? Eventually, it was found out that he was an opioid addict and was removed from ministry himself and was sent to a rehabilitation center and lasted 3 days because he couldn't take it. And that is the type of man that was making decisions over our lives. Now that is sinful, horrible. That's the first time I've said that publicly. Okay? But that man was allowed to make decisions over our lives, and he was an addict. And what happened? He knew where the bodies were buried, and he was allowed to retire, and they gave his faculties back because he knew where the bodies were buried.
Hi, my name's Ann. Got a question for you. In order for you to get back into your priestly duties in a parish, are you going to have to wait for a new bishop, archbishop in your areas, or is the laity going to have to just say, I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore?
Yes.
And get you back. So
It's going to be the laity.
So it's going to have to be.
Yeah,
the
so
laity.
there's sadly still people out there like, well, the next pope will be better. I'm sorry, have you been paying attention to the cardinals being appointed? Okay, trust me, I can almost guarantee the next pope is going to make us yearn for Pope Francis. Okay.
The next pope will be Francis 2.0.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. But can I just say this, because the coalition has been criticized since Traditionis Custodes came out and they started attacking the traditional mass. We've also taken up the mantle to defend the traditional mass. All right, and we've been criticized saying that we should only focus on the priest. Let me tell you something. When you attack the mass, you attack the priest. Okay? Many of you might know, maybe he's spoken here, I'm not for sure, but the wonderful activist Jason Jones. All right? Jason Jones said something which I wish more Catholics said after Traditionis Custodes came out with the Pope restricting the traditional Mass. He says, my family went to the Novus Ordo, and now because the Pope and the Vatican is doing this to faithful Catholics, we're all traditionalists now, and we're going to the traditional Mass. I will not go back into ministry where I'm forced to give communion on the hand, which is a sacrilege. I will not go back into ministry where I am forced to hear confessions face to face, where I'm under the seal, but the person confessing to me can go and say whatever they want to the district attorney, to the bishop, throw me in jail. I will not do that anymore. All right, I am going to bring solid Catholic liturgy to the people. It's as simple as that. And for those, if any are in this room, that are still hung up with, well, there's nothing wrong with the Novus Ordo. They started gaslighting us way before Vatican II. Vatican II was their coming out party. All right, and we have to realize that we have to reclaim the faith that built the great churches across this country and filled them. All right, when I was born, the Archdiocese of Chicago had almost 500 parishes. Cardinal Cupich is joyfully, gleefully saying that he's hoping to have that down to 200 parishes by 2025. The parish that I was baptized in, First Holy Communion, and Confirmation is now closed. It is dissolved. It is empty. They're selling it to Protestants. To be honest with you, it was built in the late 1970s. Sell it away. It looks like an office building. But still, my parish Gone. All right? It is completely gone. And here's the little secret. We have more Catholics now than ever before. There's more Catholics right now in Indianapolis and in Chicago than there have ever been. And they say, well, the reason why we had all these parishes is because the Irish couldn't get along with the Germans, and the Germans couldn't get along with the Italians couldn't get along with the Polish. And then basically the response to that, well, why were all the churches full? Because they're not full now. But you have all these Catholics saying this. Before COVID, we had about, according to Pew, which is not pro-Catholic in any way, Pew Research, 22% of Catholics were actually practicing the faith before COVID, meaning they were going to Sunday Mass. COVID brought that number down to 10 to 12%. And then the bishops, and these are the good bishops, these are the Chapoux, these are the Cordileones, these are the Aquilas, are saying, well, the Pope had every right to restrict the Latin Mass because, some of them are mean. Some of them are mean. Okay. And I got up at a conference in California, and I said, I'm sorry, Your Excellencies, Your Eminences, it seems like we're punishing a group based on the cranks in the group. And I'm only, at the time I was only 41 years old. Every group I know has cranks in it. There are cranks in the Coalition for Canceled Priests. I am sure there are cranks in the Corpus Christi for Unity and Peace. Thank you, Father Duvall. All right. If we're going to attack an organization based on the cranks, well, then the USCCB should be dissolved. It's as simple as that. So I want to say to everyone here tonight, if you still have a hang-up about the traditional liturgy, about Mass being celebrated, and all the sacraments for that matter, in the language of your forefathers, which is Latin, all right? If you went to college, I think you can figure out what Sanctus, Sanctus, Sanctus means, and what Agnus Dei, qui tollis peccata mundi means, all right? Let's stop being afraid of our heritage. Let's embrace it and realize what made the Catholic Church great. All right? And it's not just the Latin language. All right? It is our patrimony that we need to reclaim.
Oh, praise be to God.
So you might be interested in this. You may a few weeks ago saw the Irish priest that defended natural law.
Father Sheehy.
Father Sheehy. You saw him? Okay. So we had a little Zoom meeting with him. We wanted to make sure he's okay. Reach out from the coalition. Father Sheehy comes to find out that he had retired back to Ireland. He had been ordained in Louisiana and had spent 50 years ministering in the States. So he had just recently moved back to Ireland in retirement. And the unintended consequence of what that bishop did was that all the truly faithful Catholics now know who Father Sheehy is and are flocking to him. So he cannot help out in the parishes, but he has his own home chapel and he's ministering to the sheep.
Praise be to God. Praise be to God. This will be our last question, folks. And then I know some people have envelopes. So John is going to walk around and collect those while Dominic poses his question.
It's more of a comment. I want to encourage everyone here to engage your friends and fellow parish members to no longer give your donations to the diocesan appeal, especially the Campaign for Human Development. Lots of people don't know about where that money goes, and we have absolutely no control over it. So we should always be very aware of organizations that we give money to, and unfortunately our dioceses aren't it.
Amen to that. And it's very sad because I used to support the diocese. Has anybody else seen the movie Matrix? When he's red-pilled? and all of a sudden you wake up and you're actually in reality. That actually happened to me when Father Rothrock was canceled. I used to go in with the toe until I finally saw this priest be canceled and so outrageously persecuted. So at that moment, I was making my third installment, and I mean it was huge, okay, to the diocesan appeal, and I already had a check cut that was about to be mailed from our advisory fund, and I quickly called the charitable organization and I said, stop payment, do not mail that check, and I'm going to personally call the bishop and tell him why. So if you do not make these kind of statements, there's no consequence. There's actually no consequence. You know, it's like our children. If we do not give them natural consequences for their actions, that's like the definition of insanity. You keep doing the same thing expecting different results. So let's give it to somebody who will actually protect these courageous priests, and Cook for that matter, because we promote truth. But tonight it's about the coalition for canceled priests, okay? These guys are flying all over the country and driving. How many hours did it take you to get here? And they're doing this gratis, right? I didn't pay them to come here to do this. So please take care of them, okay? If you can't do it here, you didn't bring your checkbook, you can do it online with cancelpriest.org. That's cancelpriest.org. Okay, we're going to conclude.
Somewhat humorously, but you know what? Indianapolis is the second largest city in the Midwest. It should not be closed to Chicago so easily. I know some of you are like, no, we want it closed to Chicago. But to be honest with you, we should be able to come down here in the winter and not worried about being blown off the road of a major interstate. So with that said, Dominus Vobiscum, benedictio Dei omnipotentis Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti descendit super vos mani et semper. Amen. Thank you very much for coming.